What's up, my friends? How is everybody doing? And welcome to the PHLY Phillies Podcast here on a beautiful Friday in Philadelphia. Thanks so much for hanging out with us. Tyler Zulli, Andrew Frazier, along with us for the hour. We have a lot to get into today. I decided very last minute, and this is why I think being a diehard is so awesome, and I love our diehards. I love everybody that watches, but I love our diehards in this particular instance because of the fact that I decided very last minute that we were going to do a Phillies Mailbag today. I've never done a mailbag on a show before. I think it's a really cool idea. It allows us to interact in a different capacity than just the like the comments on the show and tweets and things like that. So we're going to get into that in just a second. We've got a lot to talk about. We're going to talk about one manager potentially getting the record for AAV in terms of a contract extension, and then a hypothetical that I think is interesting because one position player is moving to not just a different position, but is trying to become a pitcher in Major League Baseball. But before we do that, I want to start by saying I know that this is not the Flyers podcast. The Flyers will have their trade deadline extravaganza coming up in just an hour. So make sure you hang out with Bill and Charlie and Kelly. I think Steve may be along with them and Brenna as well. They'll bring you the best and latest Flyers breakdown. But the Flyers have traded Scott Laughton. If you haven't heard, you heard it here first. Flyers have traded Scott Laughton to the Toronto Maple Leafs, and they got a first-round pick back. Scott Laughton's been the guy that for 3 years it seems like are the Flyers going to trade Laughton? Is this year they trade Laughton? They finally did. They moved him to Toronto, and they get the first-round pick. The Flyers continue to load up on first-round selections, and they will have the I don't believe they said what year it was just yet. I'll follow up on that in just a moment.
2026.
2026 first? Yep. All right, so they have 3 this year, 2 next year, 1 in 27. So we're talking about 6 first-round picks over the next 3 years, Andrew?
Yeah, they got a boatload.
Love to hear that
Yeah.
because they need them still. I know a lot of people like to think that they're closer than they probably are, but they do need them. And that's our Flyers talk for today because I'm going to save the better conversation because they're smarter than I, but the Flyers conversation to our incredible Flyers crew. You can catch them at 2 o'clock this afternoon in a special time for a trade deadline breakdown. Let's get to the Phils. And one thing before we get into our mailbag that I wanted to talk about that I thought was really cool. I liked Jimmy Rollins, the player. I love Jimmy Rollins, the post-playing career dude. I think he's excellent as an analyst. I think he's amazing to have in camp. I think his presence for the current team can't be overstated. He knows how to win. He's done it at the highest level. He's the club's leader in hits in the history of the franchise, which dates back to 130 some odd years now. Jimmy Rollins, I think, is an incredible having an incredible stretch post-playing career. And he was on the Foul Territory podcast with AJ Brzezinski the other day, and he was very point blank about this because the Phillies have been good for a while now, and he knows the Phillies have been good for a while now, but he was very point blank about this, and I think he's right. Jimmy Rollins said, quote, as part of a larger conversation, quote, if you don't want to hear about the 08 team, go win it, right? Jimmy Rollins, he went on to further say that when he was coming up before they had won in 08, all they heard about was the 80 team. And, he adores Mike Schmidt, and he got to play for Larry Bowa, and he loves Larry Bowa. But all he heard was the 80 team, the 80 team, the 80 team, because that's the only Phillies team up to that point that had won a World Series in the franchise's history. You change that narrative when you win a championship. And Jimmy Rollins was maybe not just a cog, maybe the cog in the championship wheel for the Phillies. The catalyst, big hits, clutch plays, the leader, vocal and on the field. You knew, I don't have to go into it, right? You know how important Jimmy Rollins was to that team. And he's right? He's talking to Bryce Harper. He's talking to Kyle Schwarber. He's talking to JT Realmuto, Zach Wheeler, Aaron Nola. Not to say he doesn't want people to talk about the 08 team, but it's to say, hey, man, if you want to change the narrative, if you want the next generation of Phillies players to come through and be like, hey, man, tired of hearing about the 24 team or the 25 team or the 26 team, right? Because you were able to capture a World Series title. I love that Jimmy Rollins said this. It was, blunt to an extent, but it wasn't trying to be crass or rude or anything like that. He was just trying to say, hey, man, you've got something in front of you. you've got a team that you think is good enough to win a championship. It's been that way for 3 seasons now. Has the window closed more than you'd like it to? Probably. 2023 to me still remains your best chance when you lost to the Diamondbacks in the way that you did. You went to the World Series in 22, which was great, but in 23 probably was your best chance. Last year was a really unfortunate end to the season, but you still have a window of opportunity. So I think what Jimmy Rollins said there was pretty. I was glad to hear it from him. If it comes from somebody else, it's like, whatever. You're just being jealous, right? But Andrew, Jimmy Rollins like I said, he was the vocal leader of that team, and not only the vocal leader, but also like the productivity leader. It was him, Howard, Utley, right? That was the 3. But when you think about who the leader of that team was, it was Jimmy Rollins. And he's trying to push that to the leader of this team, Bryce Harper. I don't have any problem with this. I don't know how you feel about it, but I think this is a great motivational tool from a guy who has plenty of experience at being the motivational piece for a team.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with you. I think I think that's what he's trying to do, almost in a sense. You look back let's go back in this Eagles season, all right? And Brandon Graham made some comments about, some connections, some friendships, leadership that was going on within the clubhouse, within the locker room. It sparked them. It helped them figure out what was going on. We don't know what was going on internally. We may never know. But it helped them solidify what was going on. And they came out the next week and they dominated. I think that this is exactly what Jimmy's trying to do. He's trying to create a jump starter, a catalyst for this team. Because right now, for the fans of Philadelphia, it's hard to kind of wrap themselves around this season because we've seen 22, we saw 23, we saw last year, and we got so close and yet we failed. And especially last year, it was such a blow.
Sure.
To lose to the Mets in the fashion that they did, that going into this season, it's going to be really hard to grasp exactly what this team is all about.
Which is crazy to say because I think if we strip away fandom for a second and you look at a team, because if I said this about AL East team or an NL West team, and you could do it objectively, like Phillies are still a good team.
Oh, without a doubt.
And they should be one of the 6 best teams in the National League. And I think, Vegas agrees. I see a lot of times, I saw today, I forget which site it was, but they said they were minus 300 to make the playoffs, which is the 3rd or 4th best across Major League Baseball. Better than the Mets, better than every team, I think it was, except for the Dodgers, who I think can all presume is going to be the best team in baseball.
Yeah.
And I think the Braves were the other one, but it was the Phillies right there. This is still a really good baseball team. And it's strange to feel like there's a lack of motivation, not internally, but from, as you brought up, from the fan base because of how last year ended. Last year was a gut punch.
Yeah.
Because 100%. I think now as we're able to pull back the curtain and look at it, again, I'm using the word objective, like look at it objectively instead of in the moment, the cracks in the foundation started earlier than we'd like to admit. Some people were on it from the get-go. I got like had the rose-colored glasses on a little bit towards the end of the season and figured this team's too good. Maybe they'll correct themselves. But, game 1 of the playoffs, Zach Wheeler throws a gem, you lose. Not only Zach Wheeler throws a gem, but on top of it, Kyle Schwarber hits a leadoff home run off Kodai Senga to start the game.
Yes.
That's the only run you score.
Yep.
Christopher Sanchez was excellent in his start. Didn't get much from him. You have the walk-off, which is awesome. Ranger Suarez coming back from injury, pitched better than any of us could have expected. Didn't muster anything. Yep. The Mets series was a kick in the gut.
It was.
For a lot of us. And I think it might have been a reality check for the team to say, hey, we know you're good. We understand this is a good organization, 1-26. You have one of the more deep, talented, balanced rosters in baseball. But this isn't just like a rest on your laurels because you're good thing. You have to be able to kick it into gear the way that, let's say, the Mets did, right? The Mets were the hottest team in baseball at that point coming in. And you could play shoulda, coulda, woulda all you want, but were the Phillies, like, on paper better than the Mets? I believe so, but that's not. You don't play games on paper; you play them on the field. The Mets were the better team when it mattered. When it mattered was playing each other in those 4 games, with the exception of maybe 4 innings the first inning of the leadoff home run and then the 2 innings in extra innings in game 2, the Mets were the better team. And so I think maybe you're right. Maybe this is what Jimmy Rollins is trying to do, is like have a little bit of let's have a reality check here. Yeah. You guys are very, very talented, but don't just let it be about your talent. Go out and take it. Yeah. I got no issue with it. I think it's great from a former leader.
I was listening to Kyle Schwarber was on the radio this morning while I was driving in.
Sure.
I was listening to him, and they were talking about this season in particular, and kind of what is going to be your what's your plan for this season? What is your approach to this season, especially with after the Super Bowl and all of that stuff? What is your approach? And he said this pretty much. He's like, it's tough to win. No matter who you are. Obviously the Phillies are an upper echelon team in the league. We can all agree on that one. But it's tough. You have 162 games. In the playoffs, it becomes a different game. It's about capitalizing on mistakes. And that is what they need to work on, is being able to capitalize on the mistakes that the other teams are going to make.
The Mets took advantage of it the entire postseason, up until they ran into the Dodgers, who won the World Series, right? Think about it. The Mets were 3 outs away from elimination in the wild card round. The Brewers, with the lead, brought in Devin Williams, who, by all counts, is one of the best closers in baseball. Like, to me, it's Clase and it's Williams. And to me, they're the 2 best closers in baseball. When Devin Williams comes into the game, even though he had missed a bulk of the season and he had pitched enough where he was ready to be in that spot, and you don't not go to Devin Williams, he didn't have control. His command was bad in that wild card round, and the Mets took advantage. Big home run off of Devin Williams never, ever happens. I think it was Jesse Winker that hit the home run.
Yes.
Late in the game, propelled them to the NLDS. And then, the Mets were opportunistic. But again, I thought they were, because I thought the Phillies starters in the 4 games for the most part were good. Nola kept you in the game enough.
He did.
Sanchez kept you in the game. Ranger kept you in the game. Wheeler was excellent.
Yes.
You won one of those 4 games because, and I don't necessarily fault, like, this is where I don't fault Rob Thompson, and we could get down a rabbit hole of remembering last season. Everybody that he should have used in the bullpen was the guys that he used. Hoffman, Estevez, Kerkering, Strom. It just so happened they all pitched poorly in the same series, right? Like, are you going to be able to calculate that into your, tabulations of percentages of how we win this series? Not likely. Maybe 1, maybe 2 are bad. But, what's the likelihood that all 4 pitch poorly in the series, but all 4 pitch poorly in one game?
Yeah, it's almost like a dice roll,
Sure.
You don't know what the result's gonna be. And then when you look back at those guys throughout that previous season, or during that season, they were all fantastic. Jeff Hoffman, Matt Strom, they were all fantastic pitchers the entire season long. So you couldn't expect it. So did Rob made every move that he could have made. I think he made a great job doing those moves. It's just
it backfired.
Yeah, it backfired. And the biggest thing that was the biggest problem for the Phillies the entire series was the plate discipline.
Oh, there's no question about that. Yeah,
balls.
for sure.
That was their biggest problem. Because you look at the Dodgers, and how did the Dodgers beat them?
Yeah.
Or how did the Dodgers beat the Mets?
Just stood and looked.
They stood there and took the walks.
Yep. Stood and watched. And then capitalized on runners in scoring position, right?
Exactly.
And that's easier said than done, but it's a formula for success. Trey Turner's had the 2 highest chase rates of his career in his last 2 years with the Phillies. All right. Plenty of time to get into that, and I don't want to commiserate for too long because we've already done that enough. Let's get into the mailbag conversations in just 1 second. But before we do that, Andrew, let's tell you about some of our friends here at PHLY. And Andrew, maybe you should be the one to do this read. You firsthand experience with our friends over at Rothman. Was it your shoulder that's an absolute disaster right now?
Oh, yeah. It's terrible.
Andrew's shoulder is a mess, but if it's not just your shoulder, right? You got achy joints, bad hands, bad back. Rothman's got you because they practice specialized medicine and specialized care. That's been their passion for over 50 years. They provide high quality, compassionate, and affordable care rooted in research that leads to new treatments and better outcomes. The best thing about Rothman is they've got a doc that is laser focused on their specialty, whether it's hips, knees, spine, whatever it is, you name it. They have a team for every body part, and it's right in your backyard. Since 1970, their physicians have remained committed to research, innovation, and minimally invasive procedures to get you back to what they specialize in, which is you. Rothman has proudly served dozens of communities across Pennsylvania and New Jersey with 30 convenient offices, urgent cares, and walk-in centers. But it's not just about volume for Rothman. New patients and consults are great, but they're proud of their commitment to improving each of their patients individually. They want to make you feel like one of one, not one of 255,000 that they help each year. And that's the best thing about Rothman. You walk in, they make you feel like you are the most important person in the world. Rothman has participated in thousands of groundbreaking research and clinical trials with the goal of advancing knowledge, developing treatments, and improving outcomes for the benefit of their patients. Rothman Orthopedics, specializing in orthopedics and you. Visit rothmanortho.com/PHLY to learn more or to make your appointment today. And while we're at it, let me tell you about our friends over at Bet365. Because with Bet365, it is never ordinary. 90 million users have found that out because Bet365 offers 780,000 live streamed events each year across 78 different sports. They offer the widest range of games and markets available for live in-game betting across those 78 sports. And Bet365 is the pioneer of live in-game betting. You want to get in on the action midway through a quarter, a period, a half, whatever the case may be. Do it with our friends over at Bet365. But I've been telling you about the early payouts for a while now. NHL and NBA early payouts. In the NBA, if your team's up by 20 points or more, immediate winner, you're going to cash out. Same thing with the NHL. If your team goes up by 3 goals at any point in a game, you will win as well. So head on over to Bet365 right now. And breaking news from Bet365, new customers now get $150 in bonus bets when they place a $5 bet, win or lose. So use the code PHLY365, deposit $10, and bet $5 to get a $150 bonus bet if you win or if you lose. So head on over to Bet365, place a straight bet, a parlay, a futures bet, whatever the case may be. Whether you win or lose, you'll get your $150 in bonus bets. Must be 21 and in Pennsylvania, physically located in Pennsylvania. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem and wants help, call 1-800-GAMBLER. Welcome back to the PHLY Phillies Podcast. Tyler Zulli and Andrew Frazier with you. And again, please keep an eye out for the Flyers Trade Frenzy, Flyers Trade Deadline show coming up at 2. But it is time for your Phillies Mailbag questions. And I compiled Phillies Mailbag questions across Discord, across Twitter, and we came up with some of the best ones. And so I thought for the bulk of today's show, we would answer those questions and comments. The thing with mailbags, Andrew, I think a lot of times, people just assume they're questions. And I'm not an expert. I like to talk about this team. I think I know a decent amount about this team and about baseball, but I am not an expert. And so I just didn't want to make it just questions. I wanted to make it comments, concerns, predictions, bold predictions. So we have a slew of different kinds of conversation with us. But let's get into the Phillies mailbag for today. Andrew, if you wouldn't mind showing us the first piece of conversation. This one comes from our buddy Yishmeister on Discord. Says, with Harper revealing he's open to the outfield move for a slugger at first, are there any sluggers available right now or even before the trade deadline besides Vladdy for John Middleton and Dave Dombrowski to try and grab? Can a return of Reese be on the cards? Are there any other options? All right, let's take this one at a time. So are there any available sluggers right now? No. The free agent market is desolate. Everybody that is worth their weight in salt has signed already. I talked a little bit ago about how the best option, like externally, if you're looking for a bench bat, is Adam Duvall. So the answer to that question is probably no. The second question is, anybody available at the trade deadline? Possibly. However, the Phillies are $2 million up against the next luxury tax threshold. And the next one is the big one. We've talked about it a lot, where if they go over that, their highest draft pick is going to move back 10 spots. And I don't think the Phillies are going to want to move back out of the first round. Last year, the Phillies had the 27th overall pick. A few years ago, the 27th overall pick belonged to the San Diego Padres. They selected Jackson Merrill with that pick, ended up going on to be a Rookie of the Year candidate, and I believe actually won the Rookie of the Year for the Padres, if I'm not mistaken. But I understand that the Major League Baseball draft is a crapshoot more than anything. However, I think moving back 10 spots in the late 20s to the 30s could be detrimental to their, future success. You've gotten guys in the later rounds as of late. Aiden Miller's the big one. Obviously, that was the Hammett bone thing. But I don't think they want to move back in the draft. The point is, I don't think they want to move back in the draft if they don't have to. Next year, and I talked about this a little bit yesterday, next year, the Phillies could have upwards of $80 million in salary cap availability. between Schwarber's contract being up, between JT Realmuto's contract being up, a bunch of guys on one-year deals. Do they or do they not re-sign Ranger Suarez? Jose Alvarado has a $9 million club option that they may or may not accept or they may decline. There's some money to be had next season if the Phillies do this correctly. I think the more likely scenario, if the Phillies were to go out and acquire that first baseman slugger type of player that Bryce Harper's alluding to, it would be in the offseason next year. Vladdy's the big one, of course, but Pete Alonso could opt out of his contract with the Mets at the end of the year. And then Josh Naylor's another one to keep an eye on. He was traded to the Diamondbacks this past season, but he's on the final year of his contract. He's another guy to keep an eye on. I don't think the Diamondbacks will love to let him walk for nothing after trading for him. I mean, I know they only gave up Slade Ciccone for him, but I think that those three guys would be the primary targets to fit the mold of the player that Bryce Harper was talking about. So I don't think anything happens, I don't think anything comes to fruition this year just because of monetary availability for the Phillies, but I wouldn't be stunned if they go out and sign a big bat next offseason with what that would mean is that likely Kyle Schwarber is not back or on a much cheaper deal. JT Realmuto, same thing, may not be back or on a much cheaper deal. We'll talk more about him in the coming weeks. But I think to answer your question, right now I don't believe nothing's coming down the pipeline immediately in that regard. All right, Andrew, what do you think? What do we got for the next one? This one comes from JC Heim 90. Says, if all starters are healthy, would you look to trade Ranger on his expiring deal? If so, what would you be looking for back? I'm thinking a catcher that is almost major league ready would be ideal. Well, it's funny you bring this up, JC, because this is actually something we're going to talk about next week with Ranger Suarez's future. So, at the risk of being shady or mysterious, I'm not going to give away the entire piece of content because that would be a bad business model on our part, Andrew. But we're going to talk about Ranger Suarez's future next week in a video I believe that will drop on Tuesday. But to answer your question, there is a plausible case in which the Phillies think about trading Ranger Suarez because you're right. He's on the final year of his deal. He'll become an unrestricted free agent next season. I think he's going to command a really high salary. I think the likelihood is he'll probably get close to $20 million per season. I went and deep dove some of the players that are comparable to Ranger Suarez over the last couple of years. We'll talk more about them on Tuesday. Sorry to keep you hanging on all of this, but I don't want to, not have the content be viewed. But I do think it's plausible. I would not do it. I think Ranger Suarez is a massive piece of this team. And I know that the conversation surrounds the impending debut of Andrew Painter. That's something we're all excited about. That's something we're all anticipating. It's something that I think all of us have been pretty much in lockstep is something that is going to be beneficial for this team. I have not seen a prospect in the Phillies farm system in a really long time be as universally considered and loved as Andrew Painter. Like, I got to go back a really, really long way. I think it might be Dominic Brown. Now, Andrew, we know how that turned out, but it might be Dominic Brown. But Andrew Painter is loved nationally. He's loved locally, rightfully so. Stuff's nasty, 6'5", big frame, big body. Of course, coming off the injury, coming off the Tommy John surgery, so I don't know how quickly they'll rush him to the majors. But I think his debut is imminent this season. When that's going to be, I don't know. I would bet probably closer to the trade deadline, which maybe plays right into if the Phillies do decide to move on from Ranger Suarez. But I think even if Andrew Painter is in the rotation, for the bulk of the back end of the second half, I don't think I would move on from Ranger Suarez. I think you're going to have to take the lump of maybe he signed somewhere else for nothing. But to me, if Painter can be a fifth starter or a sixth starter, as Rob Thompson's brought up on WIP, maybe they go to a six-man rotation for the remainder of the season. But if Painter can be legitimate and be an everyday or a fifth-day starter, Ranger Suarez has so much flexibility, especially in the postseason, to be whatever you need him to be. Can he start? 1,000,000%. Can he come out of the bullpen? Also, absolutely. He can face lefties. He could be a multi-inning guy. He could be a high-leverage guy. he's a Swiss Army knife. Whatever Rob Thompson would need of Ranger Suarez, I think he could do. So I think it would be, unless the Phillies are in desperate need of a bat, or they truly get the sense that there is no chance that they're going to re-sign Ranger Suarez, I don't think they're going to end up moving Suarez. If they do, what's the return? I think probably it depends on the situation. If they're fully healthy, I don't know if they'll go and look for a prospect, as you brought up, a close to being ready to the majors prospect, or if they go and try to get a major league caliber player. It's going to depend on the situation of what they need, and I think that depends on Max Kepler. Can Max Kepler be an everyday player like they've signed him to be? What does the center field position look like? And then what does the trade market look like? If somebody pops up that's unexpected, then maybe it's too rich to pass up, right? It's somebody that you feel could be an immediate impact plus, right, this year and into the future. Then maybe you make that consideration. But I do think even if Ranger Suarez is available on the trade market this season, I don't think Ranger Suarez is going to be the most highly sought after starting pitcher on the trade deadline market. I think the Marlins are going to look to move Sandy Alcantara at the deadline. And by all reports, that seems like something they're considering. And if they do, I think that Alcantara becomes the top-end starter that they're looking for. Suarez is, as I said, he's an absolute weapon for this team. And he'd be a weapon for any team out of the bullpen or as a starter. But I don't know what the return value would be. And again, I think so. To maybe take the coward's way out a little bit, can I say I don't know? A wait and see approach. Is that a fair response to that, Andrew?
Yeah, you're allowed to say that.
I'm going to say I don't know. I would say I lean towards no, they don't trade him. I personally would not. You're just going to have to live with the consequences if he signs somewhere else. All right, Andrew, let's get to the next question. This one comes from, wow, I for whatever reason, my brain is just not processing. Andrew, can you
I think it's Jolly Roger.
Jolly Roger. Okay, that makes sense. I see the Roger on my. You ever just see a word and your brain just for some reason just doesn't process? I apologize, Jolly Roger. I just, for whatever reason, it just didn't click with me. My apologies. Question is, what's your honest take on the catcher situation of the future? Well, Jolly Roger, my honest take. I am a huge Eduardo Tait fan. I think Eduardo Tait profiles as a major league hitter. He's kind of soared up through the ranks a little bit. 19-year-old kid. They believe that he's going to grow into his frame even a little bit more. I think the pop is there. I think the hit tools are there. Listen, I think anytime we talk about prospects, we say it with a grain of salt of I don't watch Eduardo Tait 90 games a year. I've seen clips. I've seen highlights. I've seen breakdowns. He excites me as a future major league player. He's the type of guy that I think his bat has profiled well. I think he'll continue to rise quickly through the ranks. Wouldn't be surprised if you see him in Clearwater by the end of this year and potentially Reading to start 2026. With that being said, I don't know definitively yet if Eduardo Tait is an everyday major league catcher. I have kind of maintained for a while, seeing what I've been able to see and reading the scouts that know more than me, the defensive tools are the ones that are going to take the longest for him to develop. I would not be stunned if Tait ends up being a DH or potentially even a first baseman, but I would probably bet on DH more than anything. I think his hit tools are there, and I don't think they're going to go anywhere, and I think they are going to transition to him being a major league player. There's a reason he has shot up prospect rankings into the top 100, and I believe he's now the Phillies' 4th ranked prospect. At just 18, he's going into his year 19 season. There's a reason for all of that. His hitting skills are undeniable. I don't know if he translates to an everyday catcher. If that's the case, if he's not an everyday catcher, what's my honest opinion on the Phillies catching situation? It sucks. It's not ideal. And I don't mean it sucks in terms of the players are not very good. I mean, it sucks in terms of I don't have a definitive answer to that question, and that concerns me considering the fact that I don't know what JT Realmuto's how long he's going to be the Phillies catcher for. Obviously, as we mentioned, his contract is up at the end of this year. I think JT's going to get big time money on the open market in a small year sample size. Maybe a 2-year deal, $50 million, $40 to $50 million. The Phillies are going to offer him a contract. I do believe they are going to offer him a contract. He's still an incredible defensive catcher. He still leads Major League Baseball in pop time. He's right up there amongst caught stealing rates, caught stealing percentages. His blocking rates are still solid. His frame rates are okay. I don't think he frames incredibly well, but he's good at it enough. I've been on the record as saying I don't know how great of a game he calls, but all of his caught stealing metrics are off the charts. I think he can still hit a little bit. He's going to be able to hit towards the bottom of the lineup this year. He's probably going to hit somewhere in the 6, 7, or 8 range. I think that's good for him. He hopefully is healthy heading into the year. We'll see what kind of year that he has this upcoming season, but I'm not quite sure how many more years JT Realmuto will be the Phillies catcher. This year, obviously, definitively. And I think maybe they offer him a 2-year deal at the end of this. I think other teams will offer him more money. I'll see, comparing what the money is going to look like. He may decide, I like Philadelphia. My family's here. I want to stay. And the money is what the money is at this point. So as long as the Phillies are close to the one of the higher bidders, then I think, you could see JT still be the Phillies catcher for next year and maybe the following year after that. Rafael Marchand is the only catcher immediately that could take over. Let's be nice. I'm not going to be mean today. My thoughts on Garrett Stubbs. He's not a major league catcher. Marchand's thing is he needs to stay healthy, right? And that's why Stubbs is back on the deal that he was back on, because there's a likelihood that Stubbs may see major league time this year. Marchand should be the opening day backup catcher, but the chances Stubbs could play at some point. Marchand hasn't played a game in April professionally at any level in the last 5 years. And so with that being said, to answer your question, do I feel great about it? No. I mean, Taillon right now is the answer. But if Taillon is more of a DH and not a defensive catcher, I have no idea. I really don't. All right, Andrew, let's get to the next one. Next question. How do you see the bullpen? This one comes from Philly Dan in media. How do you see the bullpen shaking out? Roles and who makes it? I think, Dan, for the most part, the bullpen's set. And let's do the names before we do the roles. I think for the most part, the bullpen is set. The back end of the bullpen will be Jordan Romano, Ryan Kerkering, Matt Strahm, Jose Alvarado will be your 4, like your 4 highest leverage guys. It'll be Kerkering and Romano from the right side. It'll be Strahm and Alvarado from the left. After that, it'll be Jose Ruiz and Tanner Banks. They'll be your middle bullpen, middle relief, righty and lefty. And then it's probably 2 more spots. I would imagine Joe Ross is going to make the team just because they paid him $4 million. I think he's going to be on the roster. So it really comes down to the final spot. We talked about it earlier this week, I think it was. I think Taijuan Walker is going to be the final arm on the team. Paying him $18 million. Rob Thompson adores him. He went to Dunedin to see his game when he didn't have to. I think it's going to be Taijuan Walker as your long man, mop-up guy, multi-inning type of pitcher. But if it's not Taijuan Walker, then I think it's going to be one of the guys who are not on the 40 currently, who are non-roster invitees. I think it's one of 3 guys. I would start with Nabil Krismet. Excuse me. I would start with Nabil Krismet, who has Major League service time with the Dodgers and the Padres. Guy who throws a lot of changeups. Doesn't throw particularly hard, but he throws a really good changeup. I think he would be the number 1. John McMillan is a non-roster invitee who has pitched really well this spring. I think he's an interesting name. And then the other one, of course, is Koyo Aogi, who the Phillies signed to a minor league deal and a non-roster invitee from Japan this offseason. Funky delivery, sidewinding pitcher, doesn't throw particularly hard, has had some success in the MPL, or in the MPB, excuse me, but recently has also been sent down to the minor leagues. Last year was not a particularly good year for him. If he would have been available a season prior, I think he would have gotten a better deal and maybe would have gotten a a better chance to make a major league roster. But if it's not Taijuan Walker, I would say it's those three guys. In terms of leverage, your top four are going to be Romano, who I think gets the first crack as the closer. They paid him $8.5 million this year. I think he's going to be the closer to start the year. And Kerkering from the right side. And then it'll be Strahm and Alvarado from the left side. Before we continue the rest of the mailbag questions, because I know we have a couple of more, let's pause for just a second. Tell you about some of our other friends here at PHLY. And Andrew, I apologize to you. Before you do that, I'm going to apologize to you for a second. I saw you like scrambling at the beginning, and I realized I read the reads out of order, and that's my fault. So I apologize to you. My bad. Yeah, that's on me. I'm like, I saw you over there. I'm like, wait, did I do something wrong? I realized that I had them entirely out of order. So that's on me. Let me tell you about some of our friends here at PHLY. And that, of course, are our friends over at TrueMark Financial Credit Union. John Marks has been telling you he uses TrueMark for both his personal and his business finances, and there's a reason behind it. They are personable. They're there for you. He knows people at TrueMark by name. And sometimes when you go to the bank, they just go, "Hey, how are you? Let's get you out in and out of the line." It's not personal. TrueMark, everybody is personal, and I think that's a huge selling point when you're talking about trusting somebody with your finances, talking about somebody trusting with your savings. Whatever your financial goal is. Right now, my financial goal is saving up for a home. Homes are expensive. I don't know if y'all know that right now, but houses are outrageously expensive. But TrueMark has helped in understanding what finances, what I need to do with my finances and how to get there. They've talked to me about interest rates. They taught me about closing costs. TrueMark is excellent when it comes to any of those things. So whether you're buying a house, looking to take your dream vacation, or you're just simply building your emergency fund, TrueMark Financial Credit Union has the perfect savings account for you. So visit TrueMark.com for rates and to learn more. They are federally insured by the NCUA. Rates are subject to change. Visit TrueMark.com for those rates and to learn more. TrueMark Financial, federally insured by the NCUA, equal opportunity lender. Rates are subject to change. And let me tell you about one of our newest sponsors and newest friends here at PHLY. That is our friends over at Timeline. Listen, as we get a little bit older, I've started to feel the effects of turning into my 30s. So I can't imagine how you're feeling if you've maybe hit. All right, no, you know what? I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to be rude to people. All I'm going to say is I feel old as I get older, and I don't bounce back as well as I used to. Workouts are a little more difficult. If I get sick, sometimes I feel like the sickness is a little bit longer. But one of the best things about Timeline is they offer you longevity supplements that just make you feel better, right? It works with your cells in your body to help reverse age-related decline. They help you benefit with strength, energy, endurance. One of the things that Timeline has done for me personally is help me with my recovery in the gym. I always say my workouts are the same. I'm still lifting, I'm still running, I still am able to do whatever I do. But the next morning, I'm sore. You know, you do a push day and your chest is sore, your triceps are sore. Well, with Timeline, they've helped me alleviate some of that soreness a little bit. They've done 15 years of research and secured over 30 U.S. patents for their products to help you have the best recovery and slow down the aging process in any way that you see fit. It's not just after a workout. It could just be every day. It could be helping you on your sleep routine. It could be helping you with your metabolism. Timeline is there for you to help you get ready to be your best, your most energized, and most revitalized you. Right now, Timeline is giving you 10% off of your order of MitoPure. Go to timeline.com/PHLY today to get started. That's timeline.com/PHLY. Head on over to Timeline and get started in whatever you need. Whatever helps you slow that aging process down and feel your best you every single day. Welcome back to the PHLY Phillies Podcast here. We do have some more mailbag questions to get to. Andrew, I apologize. Do you know how many more we have before we continue?
We have 3 more.
All right, let's do that, and then we have to get to our Future is Bright segment and a lot more to talk about in the next 20 minutes. Let's wrap up our mailbag questions here. This one comes from Jamie. Jamie says, which prospect stood out to you in this round of spring training as a face we could potentially see sometime this season? Jamie says, my easy choice is Gabriel Rincones, but would love to hear about someone else. Yeah, Jamie, I think you're right. I think Rincones has taken the Phillies world by storm. Multiple home runs this spring training, big bat, big power. And in fact, I know when we interviewed, I think it was when we interviewed Justin Crawford last year at spring training, we asked him, if you could take one skill set from another teammate, who would it be? And he mentioned Gabe Rincones' power. It's real. It's a strong swing. He's quick to the zone. He's long through the zone. He has legit power, and I think it's only going to continue to grow as he gets better and better. He had power coming out of Florida Atlantic. I think there were some injury concerns and things like that, but the power is definitively there. Yeah, Jamie, you're right. Rincones is the easy answer. The other guys, I don't know if I necessarily would call them prospects, right? I think it's more guys that the Phillies have brought in on minor league deals and things like that. Those are the guys that have stood out to me. Funny enough, Carson Taylor is one of them that I thought has had an excellent spring for the Phillies, and then he was recently reassigned to minor league camp. I thought he was really good. He will get some innings as a catcher in the minor leagues. Can also play some first base as well. John McMillan is another guy that I brought up, has the potential as a non-roster invitee to make the team. I know a lot of people are super high on McMillan. Good fastball, good stuff. Haven't really had the chance to watch Koyo Ayagi too much yet. I know he's got a 4.5 ERA and his small sample size, but it just intriguing because anybody that throws, at a funky arm slot like that with, movement and doesn't throw particularly hard, but it's kind of a junk baller, always intrigues me. So I think the prospects, like the guys that you're counting on down the line, the J.P. Crawfords, those type of guys, the Aiden Millers, like Aiden Miller was reassigned and so was J.P. Crawford reassigned to camp, minor league camp. Small sample size, you haven't seen it too much from them. I expect those guys to be major leaguers. The guys that have stood out like from a statistical standpoint are more of the guys that are a little bit older, maybe quad A players, but I thought that, Carson Taylor was one guy in specific that I thought had a really good camp. A really good spring before they reassigned him to the minor league camp. All right, two more. Let's get to the final two here, Andrew. This one comes from Betty Mack. Says, the Phils have such little depth for the outfield. What happens if multiple of Kepler, Castellanos, Rojas, or Marsh bottom out or get injured? Well, Benny, I think, to be fair, that's probably a doomsday scenario, right? If multiple don't play well or get hurt, I think this is all moot point anyway. Like if Castellanos, he played 162 games last year. And I know he had a really slow start, but he had a really strong second half of the season. Was pretty consistent. Chase rates went down for a while, especially in the second half of the season. If Castellanos doesn't play 150 some games, or he gets hurt, or Kepler is just not the guy you were hoping for, he just never bounced back from the injury, he just doesn't become the same player, I think you're in a doomsday scenario anyway. You're probably going to look to maybe that's where you think about the Ranger Suarez for a position player trade. Maybe that's where you think about moving a prospect at the deadline to acquire an everyday player, not Austin Hayes, like a legitimate everyday player. But I think maybe the better question in this regard is Kepler specifically. What happens if Kepler isn't an everyday major league player? If he's more of a platoon piece, if he's more of a bench piece, and the pop doesn't return or the RBI totals don't return, then I think you're probably going to see more Rojas in center and Marsh in left, or whatever the case may be. In this particular scenario that Benny Mack lays out, I'm not sure any team survives that, right? Like, I'm not sure any team has the ability to survive their depth being tested when multiple players are either underwhelming or get hurt. I don't think Justin Crawford's ready just yet. Like, Justin Crawford would be the minor league answer, but I don't think he's ready just yet. Then you're talking about guys like Weston Wilson and Cody Clemens and those type of players that, they're nice bench pieces, but I don't think they're replacement level players. In this particular scenario, what happens? The Phillies suffer and probably then have to make an external move. So to answer that question, I think it's a doomsday scenario and the Phillies suffer when this is the case. All right, Andrew, one final one here. This one comes from Twitter, comes from Joey Wags. It says, win the division or win the division and have 5 to 7 days off, or play in a wild card series and move on while being, quote, on a roll? I have been very vocal about this one, and the answer is win the division. I know. Teams have been successful coming out of the wild card spot, playing on a roll. The Mets did it last year. A lot of teams have done it. The Phillies did it as a wild card team in 2022, went all the way to the World Series. The Astros never had a problem with this. The Astros went to the playoffs, went to the ALCS 7 consecutive years, won multiple World Series, been to multiple World Series in that 7-year span. And even since the playoff expanded and the way that the playoff has expanded, the Astros have been the model of just go win your division and do what matters. Because to me, I understand the on a roll thing. It has merit. Baseball players are creatures of habit more than maybe anybody in the world except hockey goalies. I understand there's merit to it. I think it has value, but I think when you win a division and you get the bye, you set yourself up for success. It becomes on you to do something with that setup. But you're going with the opportunity to start your ace on rest, who's probably going to be going up against a team's 3 or 4. Even if a team sweeps the wild card round and they win 2 straight, and they're going to be throwing their 3 in game 1, and they get their ace in game 1. You have 1-2-3 versus 3-1-2. If you take a 1-0 series lead, especially considering the fact that you have game 1 and game 2 at home, you could really put a chokehold on a 5-game series. You could be up 1-0 in the blink of an eye, and if you take game 2, the percentage likelihood chance that the other team comes back from 2-0 in a 5-game series is very, very low. It's happened before. It's not 0, but it's very, very low. To me, winning the division still has merit. And I understand the more that it transpires, the more that people will be like, oh, well, we got to be the wild card team and get on a roll. Here's the thing. It means something to have a team that was rolling. The Mets did it last year, right? Went all the way to the NLCS. The Tigers did it. Went all the way to the ALCS. Or excuse me, the ALDS. I apologize. You have to win the wild card round still. There's no guarantee you win the wild card round. And so the on the roll portion of it only applies if you win the wild card round. If you lose in the wild card round, this whole thing becomes a moot point, and you're in Cancun anyway, right? You're on vacation. You're in Costa Rica or St. Lucia or wherever you choose to vacation. So it becomes a moot point if you don't win the wild card round anyway. Any chance to be in the divisional round without having to exert any energy is still important to me. So to me, it's still win the division and get the bye. I appreciate everybody for doing that. That was awesome. You guys are the best. Thank you to everybody on Discord. Thank you to everybody on Twitter for this as well. We'll do this. I think we'll do this again at the trade deadline, and then we'll do it at the end of the season as well, just to kind of get a wrap up on the season, however it seems to end. But we do have to get into a segment that we like to call The Future is Bright. And The Future is Bright is brought to us by our friends at Shady Rays. Listen, I've been telling you about Shady Rays forever because I adore my Shady Rays. They're the best pair of sunglasses in all of eyewear. And now you can get Shady Rays in snow and ski goggles as well. Got a couple of weeks left on the slopes. If you're going to hit a March outing on the slopes, get your Shady Rays. Protect your eyes, people. Your eyes are important. The future is bright for 3 guys in particular. And we'll do this pretty rapid fire. The future is bright, of course, for Andrew Painter. We know this by now. Andrew Painter's debut is going to be one of the most anticipated debuts in a Phillies uniform. Andrew, is it fair to say that Andrew Painter's debut is going to be the most anticipated debut, internal debut, maybe since Cole Hamels, and is going to be the most anticipated debut, period? Could it be since Bryce Harper? Like, they've added Schwarber, they've added Castellanos, they've added Wheeler since then. But like the fanfare that is going to surround Andrew Painter's debut whenever it happens, it's going to feel like Paul Skeens. It's going to feel like Strasburg. Do you remember Strasburg's debut against the Pirates? We were teenagers at the time, and it was must-watch television. I had no interest in watching a Nationals Pirates game that day or before that day. sat down and watched that whole game because Strasburg meant something. Painter's going to mean something like that to Phillies fans.
Oh, yeah. I mean, how long have we been jonesing for him to debut?
Forever.
And then the setback, obviously, with the injury and everything like that. So, yeah, when it actually comes time, it actually debuts, it's going to be huge.
Good luck getting tickets on the secondary market.
Oh, yeah.
Good
no
luck.
way.
The minute they announce that, people are going to, people who are selling on secondary streams, like our friends at Game Time, boom, through the roof, those prices are going to go.
100%.
But Andrew Painter, for obvious reasons, right? We long anticipate the debut of Andrew Painter. He's not pitching in spring training. The Phillies have adamantly said we're going to save him for the regular season. And not only are they going to save him for the regular season, but Rob Thompson was adamant about the fact that when he makes the team, when he's on the Phillies roster, he's going to be a starter. You're not going to have to wait around. Is he going to come out of the bullpen? My thought was always the David Price role. When David Price made his anticipated debut with the Rays, Rob Thompson said, nope, starting pitcher right away. And if we got to go to a 6-man rotation, we'll do it. They're bullish on this kid, and they should be. Stuff's nasty. The second one that we talked a lot about, and the future is probably now, but I think the future, meaning this season in particular, is unbelievably bright for Christopher Sanchez. He's not a future star. He's a current star. But I think Christopher Sanchez, if he hasn't already after being an all-star last year, is going to be a household name by the end of the season. I am so bullish on Christopher Sanchez. I've been the leader of the Christopher Sanchez fan club for a really, really long time. I am super, super bullish on Sanchez this season in particular. The velo increase on Sunday was something to behold. If he starts averaging 96, 97 on his fastball compared to the 94, 95 he was at last year, whew, watch out. Christopher Sanchez is in for a big year. The third guy is probably the next man up on the Tyler Zulli is the leader of the fan club, and that's Moises Chassi. The Phillies traded Gregory Soto last year in a trade, and the most immediate return was Seth Johnson. But the guy that I'm most excited about is Moises Chassi. Chassi is got a good fastball, good stuff. Now, Chassi is a guy that's made a bulk of his appearances as a starter, and the Phillies have committed to Chassi being a starter. I personally think Chassi should be a relief pitcher, and I think I would even take it a step further that I think when his stuff is pliable and it's there at it's major league ready, I think Moises Chassi could be a closer in baseball, or at least a setup guy across Major League Baseball. The command is the big concern right now, right? They need to have him hone in the walk rate a little bit. He's done it as a little bit more as his professional career goes on. But if this guy can get his command to be where he wants it to be, Chassi, to me, has the stuff to be an electric, high-leverage back end of the bullpen type of guy. The Phillies also have their highest graded preseason grade for their farm system in the last 3 years. 2023, preseason they ranked 21. Last year they ranked 22nd. This year they've moved up 5 spots, and they are the 17th ranked farm system in baseball. Listen, it's not anything to write home about. They're still not even in the top half of baseball. But for years, we talked about how desolate the Phillies farm system was. It was them and the Angels for the longest time as who has the maybe the worst farm system in all of baseball. Now the Phillies have 4 top 100 prospects. Painter's 8, Aiden Miller's 27, Justin Crawford 63, Eduardo Tait is 92, and that, of course, comes after they moved the guy that's now the number 80 prospect in Starlin Caba to the Marlins, who ranked just ahead of them at 16th. There's still work to be done within the farm system, but the Phillies have done a nice job of bouncing back a little bit over the last couple of seasons. So the future is bright for 3 players in particular. Andrew Painter, no duh. Christopher Sanchez, right now. Moises Chassi, probably the furthest one out, but the guy that I am the most excited about. Wow, we really ran out of time quickly here. We're going to save the manager conversation for next week because I wanted to get to this. Andrew, I thought this would be fun, and you and I could play this together a little bit. Tyler Naquin signed a minor league deal with the Cleveland Guardians. Now, you may remember Tyler Naquin with his time with the Guardians his first time around. He spent 5 years with the Guardians, has spent parts of 8 major league seasons, or 8 seasons in the major leagues. So guys sign minor league deals all the time. Guys go back to their organizations that they spent a bulk of their career with. The weird part is that Tyler Naquin I thought was a solid player in the early portions of his career. Hit 270 3 times. And I understand, like, maybe he feels his career was starting to wind down a little bit. He didn't appear in a major league game last year. He only appeared in 5 in 2022. It's not a weird thing to see Tyler Naquin sign a minor league deal. Andrew, it is a weird thing to see a guy who spent parts of 8 years as a major league outfielder sign a minor league deal as a pitcher. Tyler Naquin's going to try to make it as a pitcher in the minor leagues. It's not the first time we've seen this happen, right? And Naquin's got a solid arm. We'll see how he transitions. I think one year he was 99 percentile in outfield throws for arm strength. He's got a great arm. But it's not something that we haven't seen. We've seen it before. Now, we've seen the inverse, too. I don't think this is a Rick Ankiel situation, and I don't mean like Rick Ankiel got the yips and forgot how to throw and was a danger to hitters. But Rick Ankiel transitioned from a pitcher with the Cardinals, made himself an outfielder, and became a serviceable bat off the bench for a couple of different teams. He was with Washington for a while, went back to St. Louis for a while. Michael Lorenzen is a guy that if he ever couldn't pitch anymore, I would trust to go hit as a bench piece. He's made appearances as a pinch hitter and hit a couple of home runs. But other guys have made the transition the other way. Spencer Schwellenbach is probably the most famous, was a college shortstop at Nebraska, and now is in the rotation with the Atlanta Braves. But I thought this game would be fun. Andrew, I want to ask you and everybody else out there as we wrap up today's show, which Phillies position player on the roster currently do you think would have the best chance to make the switch to be a professional pitcher? Now, I'm not saying they're going to be an ace or a stud closer, but if I were to ask you, Andrew, which player on the roster do you think has the best chance to be a professional pitcher, who would you say?
Well, I think there's one that comes to mind that I think everybody would agree on. That would be the most logical pick, and that would be JT. Yep. I think his translation, obviously being a catcher, he knows the pitches. He knows how to work with pitchers. He understands the position better than anyone else on the field. I think his transition into the role would be, and he also has just a cannon of an arm. So I think his transition would be the best of everybody. But I didn't want to just pick him because obviously I feel like his was the easy cop-out answer.
Well, yes, but I think it's the right answer.
It is the right answer. If you're legitimately actually going to do that, then JT is the guy to do it. Yes, but I was going to say Bryce Harper.
Interesting. Why is that?
We've already seen him do it once, going to first base, playing outside of his natural position, and I think he'd be able to do it again. I think he has. If anyone on the team other than JT, I think he has the mindset to learn how to become a pitcher. Now, obviously, he's not going to become a Cy Young pitcher. You know, he may.
Yeah,
not
I don't
be
think any of these guys are.
Obviously, but if you wanted a serviceable guy who could get you maybe an inning, maybe even less than that, maybe three batters.
Sure.
I think Bryce could be the guy to do it.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. I didn't think about the positional flexibility, right? You've seen him do it multiple times. Not a bad answer. Do you know who finished with the highest overall arm strength last year for the Phillies? So meaning what I mean by that is they take all of the average throws at miles per hour and say, here's what they came up with. For example, the number one answer to this question, if you went across Major League Baseball, I think definitively is O'Neal Cruz. The shortstop, now maybe going to be center fielder for the Pirates. Dude has a freaking rocket attached to his arm. His average throw is 99.1 last year.
Wow.
That's insanity.
Wow.
Now, command is a different question. Like he's sailed a ton of throws last year. But you want to talk about straight overall, O'Neal Cruz, 99.1. Do you know who had the highest for the Phillies last year?
I do not know.
How about coming in 32nd across all of baseball? So this doesn't include catchers. It's the 7 position players,
okay,
not pitcher and catcher. Coming in 32nd at 91.4, Johan Rojas.
Wow, really?
Has a sneaky, excellent arm. Yeah, finished in the 92nd percentile last year for the Phillies. And I think a lot of times maybe you don't think about it because he's like, when you think of Johan Rojas' defense, you think of the excellent plays, the closeout speed, his ability to get gap to gap. He's an excellent defender. So more times than not, you're not thinking about him, gunning guys out at the plate. Johan Rojas has an excellent arm. and I think might translate well. And again, this all comes down to like, do you have command and can you throw anything but a fastball, right? And I think JT was a high school quarterback and has a great arm. And so I think that's the right answer just inherently. And by the way, shout out to all of our viewers on Samsung, Roku, and all of our streaming platforms. Head on over to allphly.com to watch the rest of the show. I think JT inherently is the right answer. Would it shock you if JT like sneaky threw a knuckleball or something?
No.
You know what I mean? Like he'd be the guy that I'd be like, yeah, that guy throws a knuckleball. He's a weirdo.
I mean, he's a multifaceted athlete.
Right.
I mean, he played football. He's a quarterback. He's all that stuff. So could he throw a knuckleball? Would it shock me? No way.
Yeah. So, but in terms of arm value, Johan Rojas finished in the 97th percentile, arm strength, 92nd percentile. I think sneaky just by velocity alone, because velocity's huge, right? Like if you throw 87, unless you got pinpoint control and a nasty breaking ball, that I don't think any of these guys are prone to have, you're going to need to be somebody who throws hard. JT's probably the right answer, but Johan Rojas, I think, is a sneaky answer to this question.
I like that, yeah.
That's just about to wrap up our show today. I want to go through the chat just really quickly. Steve Garrison mentions that Orion Kerkering should be the closer. I think Orion Kerkering's got the best closer stuff. I think they're going to start with Jordan Romano just because he's closed. He's multi-30 game, multi-seasons with 30 saves in a season. He's been an all-star twice as a closer. I think Romano's going to get the first crack at it. If Romano doesn't succeed, Kerkering would be the guy for me that would probably get the next role. K-Red says, why do you want to say Brandon Marsh? Let's take a look at Brandon Marsh's arm value really quickly before we get out of here. That's an interesting one. Brandon Marsh had an arm value of, he was in the 91st percentile and had an average throw of 88.1. Not as hard as Johan Rojas, but not a bad arm. 75th percentile in arm strength. So it's not a bad choice. I think he would be a guy. Plus, I think he would be the type of dude that would take the mound and like try to intimidate the crap out of you. Just do some wacky stuff and just be like an intimidation factor. Andrew, would you mind just real quickly scrolling through some of the other comments just to see if we have anything else here? I know Jamie Lynch checked in and said, would like to know what my favorite ballpark food is. I don't know. This is specific to Citizens Bank Park. I got Ryan Howard's place, the hot chicken place that he opened up. They had that at the ballpark the last time I was there.
Chicken?
So good.
Colby's, I think it's called, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So good. See, one thing about me, I don't like hot dogs, and hot dogs are like the staple ballpark food. So more times than not, I end up not eating at the ballpark. I'll get a beer, maybe a water, soda, something like that. But I am not I don't eat too much at the ballpark. But
I have a gripe with the hot dog at Citizens Bank Park because they put it in a plastic container now. It's not like wrapped in a foil.
You need it in a tin foil.
So and like this is just me, but like the bun gets hard.
Yeah, that's kind of gross.
And like, who wants like a crunchy bun when you're eating a hot dog?
Yeah, I think the obvious choice is to say either Chicky and Pete's or Tony Luke's.
Yes,
but the lines are 17 miles long.
Oh yeah,
you got to go before the game, or you're missing
the concourse.
You're missing half, a full inning or more. But big thank you to everybody who checked in. K-Red, Steve Garrison. I saw Joe Tiz earlier in the chat. Thank you to all of you. Steve said, did Steve say he thinks the Phillies are going to go to the World Series this year? Interesting.
He did.
Well, time will tell. I hope you're right, Steve. Time will tell. But a big thank you to everybody who checked out today's show and every show. Big thank you to Andrew Frazier for being with me and producing and co-hosting as well. 2 shows going on simultaneous right now. Check them both out. The Eagles show, of course, with Zach Berman and Bo Wolf, and the Flyers trade deadline special. 2-hour special. You got them till 4 o'clock. I know K-Red's psyched about that, and I am as well. I saw everybody here. We have Charlie O'Connor. We have Kelly Hinkle. We have Bill Matz and Steve Jaco. And, of course, Brennan is producing. But you have all 4 of them. Excellent Flyers content. They're going to talk about all of the trade deadline, not just the move the Flyers made, but the Flyers did trade Scott Lawton earlier. We'll be back with you on Monday. Well, I won't be back with you on Monday. I'm on full-time dad duty this upcoming week. I believe you will hear from Rich Hoffman and Jamie Lynch on Monday, and Devon Givens and Rich Hoffman on Friday. I'll be back with you in the interim on the videos, some pre-recorded stuff that we'll have for you. So you hear from me a little bit, but check out Jamie and Rich Hoffman on Monday's live podcast. Big thanks to Andrew Frazier for checking out today's show. Tune on into the Flyers trade deadline show and the Eagles show right now, airing until 3 for the Eagles and 4 for the Flyers. We'll talk to you on Monday right here on PHLY. Have a great weekend.
We all silly. like the mayor.